Excuse me, did I just hear you ask me to change? No need to repeat it. My ears automatically go deaf when stupidity is mixed in with the sound wave. But I got to give you credit for the audacity of your request because you accidentally provoked me to get some things off my chest. See, you must not know how long it took me to love me, to accept, celebrate, and embrace all that is in me, to stop criticizing and demeaning the woman God created me to be, to have the courage to show up authentically. And you got the nerve to expect me to code switch, to dim my light, to switch so my shine is more comfortable for your vision. But darling, I am not a three-way bulb, and love is my one and only white. From my southern drawl to my Cherokee nose to my motherland inspired hips, it's all me. So when you send for me, you gonna get every piece. No matter the stage, I'm bringing Jesus and Memphis with me, and I will not change my color to coddle your fear. So ain't no more code switching. And yeah, I'll admit it, at one point in time, I did it. In survival mode, I was with it, but not one soul benefited from me showing up as a watered down version of myself. And since I had to fight my own mind and my own demons just to have the strength to be myself, I will never again show up as nobody else. Took me way too long to feel like I was enough. Whole time I didn't realize that I am entirely too much. El Shaddai in me show up as way more than enough. I'm too much for small-minded thinkers. I'm too much for racism covered over as professionalism. Too much for your plan, your way, your path. His promise for me is true. So I guess you'll just catch my aftermath, because I will not turn down my light, and I won't change the vibrancy of my bulb to make it more comfortable for you. If you can't stand how I shine, then I just ain't the one for you. In case you haven't heard, survival mode for Black women is over, done, and through. This right here be us thriving. This right here be us living. This right here be us showing up as God's love. And to be ourselves is the only proper thing to do. So right on, Miss Brown, hold the line, because we are the code, and the code will not be changed.
We are the code, and the code will not be changed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why her last name is Word, because she come with the words. She come with the word every time. But okay, let me start by introducing us. Okay, welcome to MJ and the Word podcast. I am MJ.
I am the Word, DJ Word to be exact. Yes, that's my real name.
Yes, it is. Her last name is actually Word. And it makes sense because she was born to do this. And so if you all haven't figured it out by now, we are talking about code switching.
Yes, let's go there.
Reference Miss Brown. So like, can we talk about that? Because everybody might not know what happened to Tabitha Brown and her situation with the Food Network, or so maybe start with that.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So her show, it's Complicated is the name of it. She has that show on Food Network. And for those that may not know her, please, honey, you are doing yourself a disservice by not following her, because she is just the epitome of love, and she's the epitome to me of self-love, and just embracing who you are. So her show is I don't know if there's another vegan inspired show on the Food Network. There probably is, but hers is, she's a vegan influencer, and that's what her show is about. And so recently, she didn't go into a whole lot of details, but recently her show was switched from a prime hour, right? You get that good nighttime time slot. And MJ, is funny because we've seen this happen to our people over time in mainstream networks, where they go from a Tuesday night at 8 or 9 or a Wednesday night to the next thing you know, they start moving the show all around. You can't find it, and it makes the ratings drop, and then they cut the show. So they switched her show from a nighttime, kind of prime time slot to like a random weekday in the middle of the day. And without going into a whole lot of detail, she basically made it clear that she was not going to change. She's not going to change who she is. She's not going to change the way she shows up She's not going to change her culture, her hair, the way she speaks. She's just not going to change those things that are her. And so she that's why I put that line in there, hold that line, because that's what she's doing. She's holding the line, not just for herself, but really for all of us. She
Mhm.
really is.
Yeah. And you know what? I respect her even more. Like I already love Tabitha Brown. She's sweet as
Mhm,
pie. You watch her little Instagram videos and her uploads. I don't follow her on TikTok, but I do follow some of her other social media accounts. And
mhm,
that's what makes her her. Like that's her signature.
mhm.
And so I just thought it was interesting when the Food Network they wanted her to change, or I don't know if they wanted her to tone down, or exactly what they wanted her to do personality
Mhm,
wise.
mhm.
But I'm like, she wouldn't have made it that far. She wouldn't be the influencer she is today if she tried to be something other than what she was. So,
Exactly.
and we've talked about this before. I'm like, which is it, employers? Do you want authenticity? Do you want people to show up as themselves? Or, I mean, are we secretly hoping that people conform and code switch to something that we think they should be doing?
Right,
Because you can't have it both ways. Like, either you
right.
embrace the person's authenticity or just tell people like, hey, at this company, we expect you to conform. Like they'll never say that, but just, I mean,
Right.
it's there in the air. Like,
Just be honest.
be
And
honest.
one of the things that she said when because she made a video, anybody can go and watch it on her Instagram, but she made a video kind of addressing it. And she always addresses things in such from a place of love, but she's direct. But one of the things she said was, if you don't want Tab, you don't want Tab. Like, if you don't want me, don't invite me. Don't hire me. Don't work with me if you don't want me. And that is one of the things I never really understood about the expectation that is placed on us to code switch. It's like, why, if you knew who I was, why invite me to your table, and you already know how I dress, and you don't want people at your table dressed that way? Then why did you invite me to the table? It just doesn't make any sense. So it's like you said about employers. It's like, which is it? Were you doing the thing we do in relationships sometimes, where you saw some potential and you thought you could change this person into who you wanted them to be? That does not work in relationships. In romantic relationships, it's not going to work in the jobs, even though sometimes we feel that pressure to try and to be something other than we're not, other than what we are. And I commend her so much and respect her so much, because that's a different level of pressure. you
Yeah.
you on a huge platform now. This is your own show. A lot of people would have just given in to that. And we've seen it happen. We have seen it happen. Like, man, what happened to so and so? She not the same. She didn't used to do this, or he didn't used to sound like that. Their whole sound changes, their look changes, everything, and they're just giving in to that pressure. I don't think it's even about money for everybody. I think sometimes for some people it's just the pressure
Yes.
of Hollywood. It's the pressure of the producers and the executives and the manager, everybody that's got to get paid. That pressure that they will put on you to change into something that you really just are not. So, I mean, when I tell you that sister's holding the line, she holding the line. I
She
appreciate it.
she is. And I will say this too. In some people's defense, I think a big part of the reason why they code switch is like a safety thing. Because they
Mm-hmm,
know if they show up, it's almost like, okay, I'm gonna bring this perception of what you
mm-hmm,
want me to be. I'm gonna live up to that. I'm gonna come in,
mm-hmm,
I'm gonna, oh, good morning, how are you? And when I leave,
mm-hmm,
it's like, ooh, all right, cool. I can go turn up some Megan Thee Stallion in
mm-hmm.
my car, or whatever you listen to. You get what I'm saying? Like it's almost like
Yes.
it's a safety mechanism so people
Mm-hmm.
can feel like, okay, I don't have to try to explain myself every time
Right.
I do something
Oh
that's
yeah.
different. Um,
Yeah.
and I admit, at one point, I used to code switch,
Mm-hmm,
quite like in one of my previous employers, um, and I stopped doing it because I used to work with a lot of like international scholars and faculty members,
mm-hmm,
students, and I was like, no, they're coming as their authentic selves. They're telling me about their cultures and their experiences. And I was like, no, they need to know what it's like to engage with the African American woman in the US. And
mm-hmm,
so, I'd start talking like, oh, yeah, Martin Luther King Day. This is why we honor this, day every January, and just started really embracing my authentic self. And that's when
Mhm.
I noticed, I just felt better. It didn't feel like I was
Yeah.
trying to be something I wasn't. So no, I mean, I'm definitely guilty. I've done it before, starting out as a young professional, but now I'd be like, I'm not doing
I'm not
that.
doing it. Yes,
I'm not-
and I even mentioned that in the spoken word piece. I've done it.
yeah,
And so like you said, I think I agree with that. For some people, they're doing it because it may just feel easier. Like they don't feel like constantly explaining their blackness and
yeah.
constantly explaining their culture to people or constantly defending it. Okay. So they just switch the code because they feel like that may be easier. And for me, when I was doing it, like I mentioned in the poem, that it was like survival mode. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I feel like this is what I gotta do in order to exist in this arena right here. This is what I have to do in order to be accepted. And personally, on a personal level, it was just a lot of insecurity for me. It was the fact that I hadn't fully embraced everything that is me. I just had not. And so I definitely didn't know how other people were going to take that because I still was struggling with it. I sound how I sound. When I show, even on like the spoken word stage, when you get invited to different type of platforms, I would struggle with that, like, because my message comes across how it comes across. It sounds preachy. It's that, that's my tone. And I'm not trying to sound like that. But even starting out, when I first really started performing as an adult, because I used to do it a lot when I was a kid, but as an adult, I even had men tell me that my presentation was too aggressive. Like the way that I did spoken word was just too aggressive and too in your face, and it was going to turn people off. I had other like men tell me that.
Mm.
And that did something to me, like, well, maybe I need to try to change and be something else, especially like if I go to a white audience, how are they gonna take this? How, do I need to change the way I express myself or whatever so it can be accepted? But at the end of the day, you hired me. So
Mhm.
me is what you're gonna get. And I was able to stop that code switching when I finally just embraced me for who I am. Like, you know what? This is the way that God speaks through me. This is the way that God shows up through me. This is the way that love looks through me. And honey, either it's for you or it ain't. And if it ain't, that's okay. We just carry on. I'm not changing it.
Right, carry on. And here's the thing. Here's the reality. And I had to have this harsh conversation with somebody who I know. She was just like, well, maybe if I do this and maybe I'll be accepted. I was like, here's the thing about workplace cultures. You can do all of that. At the end of the day, you are still, a woman of color. You are still going to be perceived a certain way by some. Not everybody is going to embrace you just based on that alone, right? And as
Right.
it's unfortunate, like, and that's why people like me exist. And we do the work that we do to try to dismantle that and all that. But that is just a reality. You can code
Yeah.
switch, and it's still not going to necessarily get you at a higher level with
Mm-mm.
the organization or get you more respect and all. So I just think you're doing yourself a disservice when you try to be someone else or when you try
Mm-hmm.
to engage in a certain way that's not true to you,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not, for some people it won't make a difference. I'm
Oh,
just
that's so deep.
it don't
That
matter.
is that is deep. That is deeper than because I've experienced this in the past where not only does it not get you more respect, it actually gets you less. It can put you in a place of being disrespected because certain folks, who have some little racist tendencies that try to act like they're not racist, um, they can view you as one of the comfortable Negroes. That's the way they put you in their mind. They view you as that black person that they can say inappropriate stuff around. Okay, because you're not showing up. You're not doing the head wraps. All right, you're not doing the big earrings. You're doing what you got to do to try to blend in. Right, to just try to blend. I've done it. I promise you, I have done it. I've questioned my hairstyles. I have, questioned my hair color and been told things. I can remember years ago, young in before I even became a counselor, being told certain things by, white supervisors about the color of my hair, and then me feeling like, oh, I guess I shouldn't get that color again, or I need to do this or do that. And I wasn't wearing any wild outrageous, it wasn't like I showed up with a rainbow bright head or whatever. But I think sometimes without realizing it, well, at least that was my experience. It put me in this position where certain people felt like they could say stuff around me, and then when I bucked up, hold up, because now I'm reporting you. They felt betrayed.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
they felt the
yeah.
betrayal.
I,
We
you
didn't
know,
know you were
I
one of them agitators.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see it being like, wait a minute, you weren't like this before. What happened? And so that's why, yeah, like it's good to go in from the very beginning, like this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
This is my authentic self. This is how I speak. This is how I dress.
Mm-hmm.
Like certain foods, I like certain music. I'm not gonna pretend like I don't enjoy these things or that
Right.
this is not part of me in the way I talk. Um, Wow, that's interesting though. I never thought about it from the perspective of people can actually respect you less.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, is it like because they perceive you to be
I think
weak or like what is it?
I
Because I
think
never
so.
thought
I
about it.
think I think that there was a perception of weakness. There was a perception of submissiveness, a
Mm,
perception of this one is not going to go against the grain, at all. She's going to go along with. She's not going to disrupt the system, because a lot of times they view, a woman that's showing up with a certain hairstyle, with a certain style of dress, she's doing her thing. They automatically are like, yeah, she one of them woke people. There are folks inside and outside the culture that think that way, and that would see you as you look like a protester. You know what I'm saying? This is the judgment that people pass. And so when you're doing a lot of code switching, I think that for certain types of certain folks, it makes them feel real comfortable.
yes.
And they get to talking around you like they talking at their dinner table. And it's like, hold up, I'm black. Did you not notice that? Am I blending in with you that good that you had the nerve to forget that I'm a black woman still sitting here and that's an inappropriate thing to say? Early on in my career, yes, ma'am, I absolutely experienced that. And we can get into this even more
Mhm.
when we talk about when we go into colorism. But
Oh,
it,
yeah,
it
that's
it's already the idea that I am less threatening than you to
mhm.
racist people. Okay. And please understand, y'all, we're not talking about all white people. We have already made that clear. It's some
Yeah,
white sisters out here that will ride to the end with you. So we're talking about racist folks, okay? So there is that idea that I am less threatening than you are, or less intimidating because your skin is darker, right? And I look a little, and then somebody that's lighter skinned than me, looks closer to white. So there's this idea of that, which is ridiculous, but that's the ignorance that's in some people's minds. And I think that's already was there. That layer was already there. And so then when I go in with the code switching and I'm just trying to blend in with the team and, not stand out as the only black woman in here, yeah, the
Mhm.
respect level dropped.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't have to be afraid of her. She's one of the good ones.
And here's the thing. Now, I will say it has worked in some people's favor too. And so
Mhm.
a lot of people have, I mean, it depends, I guess, because when I think about it, I do think about certain people who I have seen, who I know personally code switch, and they're honest with me about it. Like, yeah, when I go to work, I don't show up as my whole self. Like, for what? But they've been able to advance and kind of stay in their own little bubble. It's kind of like the
Mhm.
same thing of you don't know all of me. You're gonna get this side of me, and when I leave here, I'm gonna be another way with my friends and family, and I
Mhm.
mean, we all engage with different people differently, but it's almost like this tactic of I'm gonna be very
Yeah.
reserved and act in a very specific manner when I'm face, so that I can advance, so that I can be safe, so that I don't have to deal with any questions or backlash. And so, I mean, like I said, I think a lot of it goes down to like just trying to survive the workforce, because people
Yeah.
don't know what else to do. Like, well, some people, some people are just like,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to survive in this situation as one of the
Yeah.
few, right? So,
Yeah. And I think that was, what made me kind of throw that line in there. It's like,
mhm.
we getting beyond survival mode right now. We trying to thrive. We're trying to live. And if that means I got to kick the bucket on your 9 to 5, then you see Black women doing that in droves, And I think that something has to be said for the fact that when you stop code switching and you are who you are, I mean, sometimes you just get labeled as a troublemaker. I mean, I think at some point in our lives, we've both experienced that. Like they cause trouble. Not everybody is there for that. Some people are just trying to go there and get their job done in advance. But I think why it's so important to both of us is because of our career paths. Like
Yeah.
as a therapist, authenticity is everything to me. Like, it is my profession is built on that. My theoretical perspective is built on that. Like, you have to be yourself. And the reason you have this issue is because there's a conflict between who you really are and who you want to be.
Mhm.
So, that's my career path is built on that, and so is yours. With
Yes.
DEI, is all about acknowledging people's differences and accepting their differences, celebrating their differences, and making an equal path or an equitable path for those differences. So, like, code switching, I think, goes against everything that we are, just as
Yeah.
people, and it goes against everything that we are to be successful in our profession. So we don't have that option.
That's a good point. And you know what? I think that's why it's so much easier for us, because people expect it in our field. Whereas, if you work in corporate, you're an attorney, or if you're,
Right.
in some of those spaces where it's like you're expected to be like, okay,
Yeah.
everybody, we have to act a certain way, do this, I could see it being a lot harder. But
Hmm.
no, right, if we were to code switch in our professions, people would see right through that and then be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is some hypocrisy here. You telling me to open up, me to share, how I feel about certain things. You want me to engage in these tough conversations, and because it requires vulnerability too. Like,
Hmm.
we're doing this kind of work, and so authenticity and vulnerability go hand in hand. Uh,
Yes.
and so
Oh,
if
that's
we're
good.
if we're not modeling that, then we could lose people really easy. They'll be like, nah, I'm
Yes,
not working with them, because they're not
absolutely.
even being true to themselves.
Yeah. Y'all need to tweet that. That was tweetable. And make sure you quote MJ on that one. Authenticity and vulnerability go hand in hand. They really do, because you got
They
to be
do.
vulnerable when you're showing people who you really are. And so for both of us, our clients, they not buying nothing fake. Okay. So it's better for me to show up as me. But even in that, it was still a struggle for me to get to that place, because it's like, am I going to be accepted as a therapist? Will I lose this client if I'm being myself? If I show up to the session with a head wrap on, how is that going to come across? Like, is that too much? I mean, there was the struggle of that. And then also being out in the world of therapy, we not Black people are not the majority of therapists, it's mostly white. And so trying to even fit into that space, do I need to do something different when I go to the conference? Do I need to look a certain way? Do I need to sound a certain way? And I think that because of my profession and because of my field, it is more that I'm celebrated just for being myself. Like, people are like, oh yeah, she's cool. So I can really, really be me, and
Yeah.
I don't have to try to be anything else.
Yeah. And you know what? Can we address this real quick? It's like, So remember when I sent you the text message, like the screenshot of Tabitha Brown responding to the lady, because the lady was like, you should be lucky just to have a job. And okay, I know you got to take a sip,
She called her
but
arrogant.
she called her arrogant. And so I think a lot of it too is, and like I just think about some conversation I've had with some mentors and some, some old heads, as I like. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way or anything. We joke about it like, oh, one of my old heads, are you looking out for me? But they will say, oh, you just got to play the game. Or, they'll give some advice that kind of contradicts showing up as your authentic self. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay. And I get it. Like maybe that worked well for them in their careers, and that
Right.
worked for them in life, to having to be just, okay, let me play the game. And but I did not like the lady's response of, you should be lucky you even have a job, or you should be lucky you're arrogant, or whatever it was. Because I think we should not perpetuate that. We should not
No.
be trying to encourage each other to be something we're not. Like, if anything, we should like, no, we're going to show up as ourselves, and we're going to support each other in this process too. Like, we're going to like show a unified front, like, this is us. We're not doing that. So I just,
Because we can. In this generation, in this day and time, we have a lot more freedoms than our people have had historically, so sometimes, if you didn't switch the code right, that could mean your life. That could mean you hang from a tree. That could mean a tree burning in your yard. I mean, for bucking the system. And even then, a lot of them still buck the system. We're like, we're not doing that. We showing up. But nowadays, we have so many more, so much more. And we're given so much more. We've earned so much more. We've learned so much more. And I think it is irresponsible for us not to utilize that the right way, and to perpetuate that message of, you just need to be thankful you got a job. Why I mean, thankful to who? I mean, God? Is that what you mean? Because I am thankful God I have God. But you saying
she
just
was
thankful
doing
that you
just
keep a house?
fine. She was doing just fine. That's my thing. I'm like, she got to where she is now, though, being herself,
Yes.
because she was so authentic. So I think that does not help when people advise, like, well, you need to just play the game. And, if you have to code switch, that's just what you have to do. That's all a part of it. And so I think that there's still a lot of that too. And that's why I think a lot of people feel the need to code switch when they're in certain environments, because they've been taught that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of going back to an earlier episode, but you got to work twice as hard, and you got to do this, and then, all of those things. And when you hear that over and over, you can't help but to be like, okay, all right.
Right.
My mother told me I have to work twice as hard. I have to show up a certain way. And after a while, it's like, no, I can tell you now, though, Generation Z, they not having this. I love Generation Z. They are like, nope. We're showing up authentically. We want organizations that are socially responsible. We want inclusion. We want equity. We want to feel accepted. We want belonging. They are like, so I see the pattern breaking. Like, I see it getting better in terms of people feeling that they could show up as themselves.
Yeah, you know what? I think one of the reasons why that's changing is because it's exhausting when you're not. It is tiring. Like, even having to, sit and listen to crap, and sit in staff meetings and behave a certain way or whatever, not be yourself, having to be around at the company picnics and all of that, and you can't be yourself. And it doesn't mean, you have to just wild out and act like you're the club. I mean, we have a professional face, but that's still, I can be me and professional. So it's exhausting when you are just constantly trying to fit somebody else's definition of you. And I think that to make it clear, that's what my idea of code switching is when I am trying to fit your mold for me. I'm trying to fit into someone else's definition of what I should be. And that is tiring.
It is.
That's tiring.
It's draining.
Very. And if someone is playing the corporate game and they're trying to rise up the corporate ladder and that's what they feel like they got to do, that's one thing. But for people who are like us, like, this entrepreneurial thing and we're getting contracts and all of that, listen, no, I'm not, because this is who I am. And like I said in my piece, I had to fight too hard to get right here. I had to
Yes.
fight too hard to listen to the sound of my voice on a recording and not cringe and not think that I needed to change and try to sound some different, some other way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to fight my own mindset to get where I am. I'm not about to change it for you or for what?
Yeah.
Nah, boo. No.
I love that. And I mean, it's so true. Like, because we talked about our journey and us having to grow and really come to accept different parts of ourselves. Like,
Mhm.
I used to be, I'm just thinking like when I was a kid, I was kind of like that kid who liked comic books and like I wasn't doing all the stuff everybody else was doing. Like I like comic characters and like if anybody has seen me, they've seen me dressed up. Like I want to go to Comic Cons and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and for a long time, I felt bad about that. Like, oh, I shouldn't let people know that I'm like into comics and sci-fi and stuff. But then after a while, I was like, no, I'm not switching anymore. Like I can't switch that off. Like even
Right.
when I get to work or in certain environments, I'm still gonna love comic books or I'm still
Hmm.
gonna love comics. So why pretend like I don't? You know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's just like one example, but it's exhausting. It's
It
exhausting
is.
trying to be somebody else. Like, oh, I should be playing with Barbies instead of playing with,
Yeah.
with Spider-Man, like, no,
You
no.
you know that's such a good point because it just reminds me that code switching starts so early
It
on in
does,
life. Like, I had not even thought about that until you just said
it
that.
does.
Like, this is not something that starts in corporate America. This is something that starts very early on, where you're getting told or receiving the message that something other than you are is better. What
Yes.
something else is better. Whatever you are, then the opposite of that is the best.
Hmm.
And wow, like the messages that we receive as children, that is so detrimental.
It is. And like a lot of people, we don't even realize because we don't call it that, at that age. But play with this instead of that, or
Mhm.
you have to be this way. Don't play with the truck. You got to play with the Barbie. And
Right.
we're taught like at a fairly early age, like you need to conform to this norm or this standard in order to
Mhm.
be accepted. So like, and when you think about it that way, can you really blame a person if they go to a work environment and they're like, okay, let me code switch to survive? Because
Yeah.
that's what they've been taught, like, and conditioned to think that they have to switch from their true person to this temporary person that they're really not. Like this isn't really them, but they have to go into this mode in order to progress and be seen as a normal,
Yeah.
quote unquote, person.
And it's always switching to the dominant or the majority culture.
Yes.
Because when you see a couple of white folks that come to a black church or come to an event that's majority black, they not changing up, changing who they are. They not switching. They just in there being
Mhm.
themselves. Now you do have those people that appropriate and whatnot, but I'm just saying, like the it's often that we are expected to lean into the European, version of things, or a more European style of culture, or a more white American culture versus the other way around.
Mhm.
Which and that message comes so early on. This is part of, I'm thinking back to where when we were little, there weren't that many black dolls. You know what I'm saying? Like it took a long time for us to even get dolls that look like us.
Mhm.
And I can remember, you just brought this memory up for me, being a little girl, and I was playing with some girls in my grandmother's neighborhood, and they were all older than I was. So in order for them, to me, for me to be able to play with them, I had to follow their rules. And one of the girls had all these Barbie dolls. All of her dolls were white except for one. She had one black Barbie, and they were always forcing me to take the one black Barbie. And
Mm.
it was like it was bad. You know what I'm saying? It was the weird doll. It was it was the doll that nobody else wanted to have. And I'm the one with this beautiful chocolate Barbie, seeing it as this is out of place. There's something wrong with this because all y'all got the white dolls with the long blonde hair. And so that idea that something other than you is better starts so young. It starts
Yes.
so young. And I think with Gen Z, like you mentioned, they've grown up having better representation. They've grown up being able to look on TV and look in movies and see positive images of themselves, and to go to the store and, you know, I'm about to be 42. I was part of the transition where I went from, you know, there are no black dolls to, oh my, we got black dolls on the ship. So I've been alive through that. But this next generation or a couple generations after me, they've kind of grown up with that. And so I think that's what makes them be like, no, we're not,
Yeah.
it's not black is beautiful or whatever. You even got dolls now with impetigo that you never saw that before. You know, the skin disorder that makes your skin
Oh,
lighter in certain parts. And I think it's called, what's it called?
vitiligo.
Yeah, vitiligo. What did I say? Impetigo. That's something else. Vitiligo. But they got dolls even with that now. So
Yes, they sure
so
do.
as a little child growing up, that kind of becomes your norm, like seeing this positive representation that a lot of us just didn't see. And so I think that's what makes this generation, part of it is what makes them so different. Like they are not falling for that okie doke.
No, they're not at all. And I love that about them. Like, because, you know, everybody's like, oh, millennials, they're radical. And I'm like, nah, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. Just wait till Gen Zs start coming to the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing radical about wanting to show up as yourself and wanting to feel a sense of belonging. And, you know, one thing I'll say too, and I think it's really important for people to understand, and this is probably its own episode, but how people define professionalism, right? Who defines professionalism? Um, just like we talked about in our last episode with the hair piece.
Mm-hmm.
Black
Mm-hmm.
hair is professional. My culture is professional.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a certain dominant group saying, okay, these are the norms, these are the expectations, this is
Mm-hmm.
considered professional,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to play a role in people feeling the need to code switch as well. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's so many different factors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we need to assess who's setting the norms here. If we really want to embrace people and have, you know, a diverse workforce, then
Mm-hmm.
we need to look at who's setting the norms and
Yeah.
who's defining what is professional behavior, what is professional attire. You know, like if I show up in a dashiki, I
I
mean,
was just about
as
to go there.
opposed to a Donna Karen suit,
I was just about to go there.
like it shouldn't matter. Like this is a part of, you know, my culture, and this is what I want to wear. Um,
Exactly.
so we need to think about who's
Exactly.
defining these things too.
Yes, because I mean, in a lot of cultures, the dashiki is business attire. That's dressing
Yeah.
up. You know, it's formal looking. It's so I mentioned that in the piece too. Like, don't come to me calling it professionalism when it's really racism. Don't do that. Or when it's prejudice, or when it's really discrimination, and you are calling it professionalism. I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
You know, it should be it shouldn't be that way. That's insane. But like you said, it really is a matter of who is controlling the narrative.
Yeah,
You
who's setting
know.
the norms, who's controlling the narrative, exactly.
Mhm,
And that's
mhm,
something that we have to consider too. And that's, you know, part of the work that you and I do. Like, okay, let's really look at this for what it is, like helping people really assess. Like, I'm looking at it from more of an organizational standpoint, and you're working directly with individuals,
mhm,
like to help them break it down. Like, is there more here? You know,
mhm.
so I just, it code switching. I mean, it's actually more complicated than we think,
Yeah,
at first it was just like, oh, it's just people trying to pretend to be one way at work, and then they come home and they're somebody else. But really, when you think about it, all of that stuff is so deeply embedded
Yep.
in from the time we're children.
Yep.
And oh nope, you need to do it this way, or it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's so embedded in
Mm-hmm.
expectations, and not
Mm-hmm.
just from the workplace, but from parents, from family members, from
Yeah.
school telling you, oh no, mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for example, my dad, this is kind of like an extreme example, but he's actually left-handed,
Mm.
and they forced him to become right-handed.
Wow.
They forced it. It was like he had to switch over
See,
from
go with the
left-handed to
majority
right-handed,
culture.
and he would
Go
get
with the
in trouble.
majority.
Exactly, because most, and this is a good example, because most people are right-handed.
Right.
So he had to conform to the majority. And, at the time, as a kid, he probably was like, I don't know why I'm being treated this way. But
Right.
what that taught him as a kid is that, you are expected to follow the behavior of the majority, and the majority of people write with their right hand. So when you think about it, it starts really early, like this idea of you have
Mm-hmm.
to follow what the majority do.
Mm-hmm. And it's really sad because, and I know our parents, they did the best they could because
Mhm.
they didn't know. And that's what makes me hate that we're so cut off from our homeland, and we don't know, most of us don't know what tribe in Africa we came from, what country we came from. So we're cut off from some of those traditions and some of those, rituals, and the clothing, the attire. We don't even know what it is, a lot of us. And so they couldn't teach it to us. So when it was time to tell us to conform to something, it wasn't conform to the ways of Kenya, or of
Yeah.
Ghana, or for me, hey, this is what the Cherokee tribe does, and that's where you're from. So you need to conform. This is part of your culture. Like, it was conform to what culture were we all being told to conform to? Come
Right.
on. The
Exactly.
majority culture in the United States, the
Mhm.
majority race here. That's what we were told to conform to, which is, and in a lot of ways it's sad, but a lot of things about our culture have been demonized and weaponized.
Mm.
Things that we don't even know come from Africa, and then we're told, oh, that's thuggish, that's ghetto to do. And so some of it takes some research and some study on our own part, so that we can get back to those roots, and we can show up even more authentically, and do the things that we do as a culture. But we got to know what that is and what that looks like.
Right. And that's a good point too. Sometimes it's hard to show up as your authentic self when you don't know what your authentic self is, right? It's like, who are you? Who am I? And that
Yeah.
comes with a lot of self-reflection, like on a personal level, and then
Mhm.
learning about, like you said, the culture, learning more about where you come from, more about traditions, and just I mean, when you really feel, and I've seen several people too, and I will tell you this is as a positive, I have seen several people kind of transform over the years, and you just see them become more and more comfortable being
Mhm.
themselves, and they just growing and flourishing. And so there's more to this than just, oh, you shouldn't feel like you have to conform. Like it really is, like when you are truly able to show up in a space where
Mhm.
it's me, and you, if you don't like it, I'm sorry for you, but I'm gonna keep
Mhm.
being me. I mean, the confidence that comes with that, the just
Mhm.
it just people just radiate this just pure, authentic,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like I can't think of a
Yeah.
word, but I can say confidence. And it makes a difference. You can tell when
Yeah.
people are really living in their truth. And so
Yeah.
that's why I am a firm believer in, I really want you to feel comfortable showing up, living in your truth. Think about it
Mhm.
that way. Instead of just
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, let me show up as, my pure authentic self. If you think about it differently, maybe that will make you feel more comfortable showing up that way,
Mhm.
living your
Yeah.
truth. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, we gotta point this out that as women, we start getting told so early to how to perform.
Oh yeah.
So when you go on this date, behave like you think a wife should. Do the things that a girlfriend would do. You know what I'm saying? And so from the jump, it's not like be yourself and the right man is gonna come to you. It is act a certain way when you go out so you can get a man.
Yeah.
Like
That's code switching. We code
it
switch in relationships too, and on dates, and all of that's code switching. Yes.
is. Or being told, and I would hear this so much, make sure you smile everywhere you go because a nice man might see you. But what if I don't feel like smiling in that moment? What if I have a headache? I have to keep smiling, or dress a certain way, sit a certain way. Ladies cross at the ankle, not at the knee. All of these different curtsy, all of these different things that we're taught so early on, and I think that can cause a person to be very confused about who they are. What
Mm.
is the authentic version of yourself? And then what if it looks completely different from what your mom and dad told you that it was supposed to be, or what your church told you it was supposed to be, or your friends or society? Then you got to go through this whole process of trying to just embrace you
Yes.
after you figure out who that is. So when we started even talking about this episode, I didn't even think about just how deep this goes. But the beauty of it is, though, when you live free and you show up as yourself when you finally get there, what I've noticed is that it gives other people the strength and the courage to be themselves too. Like,
Yes.
and I think that's one of the things that makes me a good motivational speaker and it makes me a good therapist because I show up as myself and people can feel it.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, she just all the way on. She's just her. And they love that. And that's something that other people want to seek out. Like, how can I love myself the same way she loves herself? And I think that's part of Tabitha Brown's draw is
Uh-huh.
that you can see that woman loves who she is. She is fully embracing herself. And when you do that, you really give other people, some folks need the permission to do that. They need validation to do that. And you give it to them when you're doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly right. Well, I commend Tabitha Brown. I know it's tough. It's tough,
Mhm.
especially when you feel like, oh, I just got a dream position. Like I'm gonna be on the Food Network, and
Mhm.
then you get that. It's like a slap in the face, almost like, oh, by the way, can you change this about yourself? It's like, really? Why did y'all hire me in the first place? But I commend her for standing her ground and saying, you know what, this is me, and this is who you're gonna get if you want to
Yep.
work with me. And so I
Yeah.
just have a lot of respect for her. I think she did the right thing. And I don't think,
Mhm.
I think if anything, more people are going to want to work with her and respect her because of it. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if I could tell everybody, my takeaway from all of this is that who you are is so valuable and it's way too important for the people you were placed here for
mhm.
you to forget about it and try to be somebody else. You do yourself a disservice and you do the people because we're all here for a purpose, right? And who you are is just too important and too valuable and too vital to your purpose for you to try to change it and be something else.
Mhm.
So
Yes,
don't.
just don't. Like, I mean, and oh goodness, because I'm just thinking, like, I know it varies from situation to situation and you get in these survival modes, but just at the end of the day, remember it's exhausting.
Yes,
It's
it is.
exhausting. And then there are places out there. I really have to stress this too. Like there are places out there that are willing to embrace you as you are.
Yes.
So, if you're in a situation where you're like, okay, this is temporary until I find the
Hmm.
next place, just know that they exist. There are plenty of organizations that get it.
Hmm.
And just people, not just work, but like people in general. Like if you're finding that you have to code switch in a relationship in order to be
Hmm.
accepted, there's somebody out there who will love every part of you and love your
Absolutely.
entire whole being. So
Yep. If you got to change who you are and you're suffering and you have to change who you are, you haven't found your people yet.
not yet.
Point blank, plain and simple. You have not found your people and you have not found your place yet.
Not
Because
yet.
that ain't yet. That ain't it. Where you are right now. If you got to change who you are, those are not your people, and that is not your place.
Yep.
Period.
Period. That's a great way to end that. Like, I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, that's a quote too. That's a quote. Yeah, I'm putting that on Twitter later. I'm gonna
that's
be like,
right.
"Give me a word." Well, this was good. Like, I enjoyed this because it did help me really think about code switching in a different way too. Like, I never thought about
Mhm.
some of the different aspects that you brought up, and I was like, oh yeah. So yeah, but
Yeah.
we just got to keep dropping knowledge on folks and getting them to think.
Yes, that's what it's about. And thinking and then changing your thinking when necessary, you know?
Learning and unlearning. I see
Hmm.
that. Like, unlearning can be just as important as learning sometimes,
Yeah,
and we have to unlearn these certain behaviors that may have been taught to us. Like, oh, you have to behave this way, do this. It's like sometimes no,
right.
that's not the best way. Yeah, because I'm not doing
Absolutely.
myself any favors.
Totally agree. Totally agree with that.
All right. Well, you want to close us out, sis?
All right, y'all. Keep in touch with us. Stay tuned. Make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms. MJ and the Word Podcast is where you can find us. We drop new episodes every week. If you like to watch the full video, you can definitely head over to our YouTube page. Go ahead, honey, and hit that follow and then subscribe. Go on and just do it. Hit those follow and subscribe buttons, okay? Because you don't want to miss us as we head towards the conclusion of our first season. There's so much more in store, so you do not want to miss out. And just remember, in all things, you know what? Show up as love. Show up. Let God show up in you, and that means you have to show up authentically. There is no other way.
Yes. Amen. All
Yeah.
right, y'all. Until
See
next
y'all
time.
next time.